The sky above Vorta 9 was always dusty. Red winds moved slowly across the planet's broken surface, carrying the scent of rust and heat. There were no cities here, only rocks, scrap metal, and silence. Elias Wren lived alone on this forgotten planet. Once, long ago, Vorta 9 had been a battlefield. Now it was just a graveyard for machines and memories. Elias had made a home inside the remains of an old war cruiser, half buried, half standing like a skeleton rising from the sand. He called it the Iron Nest. Each morning, Elias walked out with his scanner, looking for parts in the wrecks around him. He was a scavenger, but also an engineer. If something was broken, Elias could fix it, no matter how impossible it looked. One evening, while eating his simple dinner of ration stew, the sky flashed. A bright, silver light tore across the heavens like a comet. Then, a loud boom, the ground shook. He stepped outside and saw smoke rising far beyond the canyon. "A crash," he whispered. "A ship just went down." Without wasting a moment, Elias grabbed his tool belt, goggles, and a portable scanner. He jumped onto his hover sled and sped off into the night. The ravine fields were dangerous. Tall cliffs, sharp rocks, and sudden storms made them hard to travel. But Elias had been through them many times. He followed the smoke trail, driving carefully around broken metal towers and fallen satellites. After 2 hours, he found the crash site. A sleek, alien fighter lay broken in the rocks. Its wings were folded in like a bird hurt in flight. The hull was cracked, but the core hadn't exploded. Smoke hissed out from several vents. One side was burned, the other dented. Elias approached slowly. "Hello?" he called out. No answer. He climbed onto the ship's side and looked through the cracked glass of the cockpit. Someone was inside. A woman. Tall, silver-blue armor. Her skin had a faint glow. Elantari, he guessed. A species known for their beauty, pride, and advanced technology. She was unconscious, but breathing. Elias knocked on the glass. Still nothing. He used his plasma cutter to open the hatch. A hiss of air escaped. Carefully, he pulled her out and laid her on a flat rock. She had a wound on her head and her armor was sparking in places. But she would live. "I'll get you out of here," Elias said, gently lifting her onto the sled. Back at the Iron Nest, Elias placed her on a clean cot and began scanning her armor. It was like nothing he had seen up close. Alien alloys, energy weaves, internal tech layers far beyond human design. But he wasn't interested in the suit. He cared about the person inside. He cleaned her wound, gave her water, and kept the room warm. He had saved people before during the silent border wars, but never someone like her. She woke 3 days later. Her eyes opened slowly, deep violet, like distant stars. "Where?" she whispered, trying to sit up. "You're safe," Elias said calmly. "Your ship crashed. I brought you here." She looked at him, eyes full of confusion and caution. "You're human." "That's right. Name's Elias." "You?" "Commander Talira Visari, Elantari Defense Force." He nodded. "You're lucky. The crash didn't kill you." She tried to stand, then winced. "My ship, it's outside. In bad shape, but I've seen worse. I can fix it." She blinked. "With what? This place is made of trash." Elias only smiled. One man's trash is another man's starship repair kit. Over the next few days, Talira watched as Elias worked on her ship. He pulled parts from old war machines, cut panels from scrap drones, and even used wires from an ancient solar farm to reconnect her power grid. It looked messy, but somehow, it worked. "You're not just a scavenger," she said one evening as they sat near a fire. "I used to be a fleet engineer," Elias replied. "Built engines, fixed broken ships during combat, but I left all that behind after the war." "Why?" He stirred the fire with a stick. "They didn't like that I fixed things my way. Command wanted rules, I just wanted results." Talira was quiet. She understood more than she said. You're different, she said finally. You mean strange? No, I mean useful. They both laughed. As days passed, they talked more. Talira told stories of the Elantari worlds, bright cities in the clouds, floating gardens, music that changed color in the air. Elias listened with wonder, but said little about his past. He worked on her ship by day and helped her walk by night. Slowly her strength returned, and slowly something else began to grow between them, something quiet and unspoken. Then one morning, Talira stood by the ship and frowned. This engine? It's running, she said, amazed. How? I built a bypass using an old drone reactor. And a modified thermal coil, Elias said, wiping grease from his hands. It's not pretty, but it'll get you back in the sky. She looked at him. No human should be able to repair Elantari tech, especially with junk. He shrugged. Nobody told me I couldn't. She smiled for the first time. A real smile, not just polite. And in that smile, Elias saw not a commander, but a person, lonely, strong, and maybe, just maybe, beginning to trust him. But the peace wouldn't last. That evening, a signal lit up on Talira's ship. Short, sharp, encrypted. Her face went pale. What is it? Elias asked. She turned to him, eyes full of worry. That wasn't a rescue signal. It was a scan pulse. Someone's looking for me. Elias stood still. Friend or enemy? I don't know. But if they find us, we may be in danger. He nodded. Then we'd better be ready. The desert wind howled outside the iron nest, making the old walls groan. Inside, Elias tightened the last bolt on a control panel made from 3 different ship models. Sparks flew as it came to life. Commander Talira Vasari stood nearby, her eyes scanning the readings on the ship's screen. She still wore her damaged armor, but her posture was stronger now. Her voice, however, was cautious. That signal we picked up yesterday. It was military grade. Someone knows I crashed here. Elias nodded without looking up. And they didn't send help. That tells me they're not friends. She crossed her arms. Or they don't want me alive. There was silence for a moment. Then, Elias stood and looked her in the eyes. Then we finish repairs and we leave before they get close. Talira's eyes narrowed. You say we? You're coming? Well, I wasn't planning on staying behind to host a welcome party for people who want to shoot you, Elias said with a small smile. Talira opened her mouth to protest but stopped. She turned away, pretending to study the engine, but her voice was softer now. You're not what I expected from a human, Elias. He raised an eyebrow. That good or bad? She didn't answer. Over the next 2 days, they worked non-stop. Elias used scrap from crashed satellite towers, melted old armor plates for hull patches, and even reprogrammed an old AI drone to serve as a navigation core. It was clunky, but it listened to voice commands, and it called him Captain Wrench. Talira, impressed despite herself, helped with diagnostics. She began to understand Elias's strange language. Wires tied with cloth, cooling systems using cooking pots, broken tech fixed with sand filters and tape. One afternoon, as they repaired the ship's side panel, she asked, How do you know how to do all this? You've never seen Elantari systems before. Elias wiped sweat from his forehead. Machines speak a language, doesn't matter where they come from. You just have to listen. You listen well. Elias shrugged. Lonely planets teach you patience. She looked at him quietly. There was something behind those words. Pain, maybe. Or memories. Later that evening, over a small fire, she sat across from him, her gaze softer than before. You were in the war, right? She asked. Elias stirred his soup. Yeah. The silent border wars. Fixed ships. Repaired escape pods. Saved lives when I could. And then you disappeared. Command wanted rules, rank, paperwork. I just wanted to keep people flying, so I left. Talira nodded. You were right, people like you fix more than machines. That night, a small sandstorm blew across the canyon. Talira couldn't sleep. The wind sounded too much like the whisper of enemy engines. She stepped out of the bunk room, her blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She found Elias sitting near the ship, fixing a broken wing flap under the moonlight. "You don't stop, do you?" she asked. Elias looked up and smiled. "Not when a ship's almost ready." She walked over and sat beside him. For a few moments, they just listened to the wind. "I used to think humans were loud, messy, and too emotional," Talira said softly. "And now? Now I think maybe those things are what make you strong." Elias didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Maybe. Or maybe we're just too stubborn to give up." She laughed, a short, honest laugh. "Stubborn can be good." Their eyes met. For a moment, there was silence. But it wasn't uncomfortable. It was full of something unspoken. The next morning, trouble arrived. Elias was welding a panel when a sharp beep, beep, beep came from Talira's ship console. "Unidentified signal approaching," she said quickly. "Two flyers, not Elantari." Elias jumped up. "Raiders." He rushed to the workbench and grabbed two laser rifles, old, dented, but working. He tossed one to Talira. "You fight?" she asked. "Only when I have to." Together they ran to a rocky outcrop overlooking the flat canyon floor. Two rust-covered hovercrafts were coming fast. Raiders, local warlords who scavenged anything, and anyone, they found. "They probably picked up the same crash signal I did," Elias muttered. "They want the tech." Talira's face hardened. "They'll take more than that if they win." Elias pulled out a small remote and smiled. "Then we don't let them win." As the raiders approached, Elias activated his defense grid, a mix of salvaged turrets, scrap drones, and buried charge packs. He had set it up years ago for wild animals, but it still worked on unwanted visitors. The first hovercraft hit a magnetic mine and flipped. Sparks flew as one raider rolled free, coughing. Talira took aim and fired, stunning him before he could get up. The second craft turned, firing wildly. Bullets hit the rocks near Elias. He ducked behind cover, then shouted, "Now!" Talira pressed the second button on Elias's remote. A hidden turret popped up from a pile of scrap and blasted the second craft's engine. It spun out and crashed near the canyon wall. Within minutes, the fight was over. They stood over the stunned raiders. Elias looked at Talira. "You all right?" She nodded. "I've been in battles, but never one like that." He grinned. "Welcome to Vorta 9 Engineering." After cleaning up, they returned to the iron nest. Talira sat down, quiet, staring into the fire. Elias placed a cup of hot tea beside her. "You okay?" She looked up at him, then nodded slowly. They weren't just random raiders. They had Elantari tech, modified weapons, stealth chips. Someone gave it to them. Elias's brow furrowed. "Someone from your side?" "Yes. Someone in my command. They wanted me dead." Elias sat down beside her. "So what now?" She turned to him. "I finish fixing the ship. Then I go back and expose them." He watched her for a moment, then said, "You'll need someone who knows how to fix things when they go wrong." "You mean you?" Elias shrugged. "I don't like traitors, and I don't like when people shoot at my friends." Talira smiled softly. "Friends?" He looked into her eyes. Or maybe something more. Her cheeks turned a faint shade of violet, the Elantari version of a blush. She looked away, but not far. "You'd leave your home to help me?" Elias stood and looked at the ship. "It's not a home. Not really. You make me feel like I belong again." Talira stood too. She took his hand gently. "Then let's finish this ship. Together." The morning after the attack felt strange. The wind was quiet. The sky over Vorta 9 was a pale gold, and the air smelled like warm dust and burnt wires. Elias walked through the wreckage left behind by the raiders. Broken hovercraft parts were scattered across the canyon floor. His traps had done their job, but it wasn't enough to make him feel safe. Talira stood nearby, holding one of the raiders' stolen weapons. Her eyes were sharp, scanning every corner of the rocks. Her voice was calm but serious. They had Elantari-made blasters, not standard models. Someone gave them custom weapons. Elias nodded slowly. They didn't just find these in a junk pile. She looked at him. This proves someone inside my command wanted me gone. They used raiders to finish what the crash didn't. Elias kicked a broken gear with his boot. So they're watching, maybe even tracking us right now. Talira stared at the sky. If they know I'm alive, they'll send more. Elias looked back at his workshop, then at her. Then we need to finish your ship today. They worked fast. The hull was patched, the reactor was humming, and the navigation system, rebuilt from old comm drones, was finally online. Elias even added a shielding boost using leftover energy cells from a mining bot. As he adjusted the power conduits, Talira leaned over and pointed. That circuit, why is it bent around the coolant lines? Elias smiled. Because the coolant's broken, and that's the only place the charge won't overheat the backup core. She raised her eyebrows. That shouldn't work. But it does, he said, flicking a switch. The engine lit up with a low, powerful hum. Talira stepped back, impressed. You really can make anything fly? Elias laughed. Not anything. Just the impossible. By late afternoon, the ship was nearly ready. They stood under the wing, now polished with a mix of sand and oil. Talira reached out and touched the metal. I didn't think it could ever fly again. And now? Elias stood beside her. Now it's yours again, but stronger. She looked at him with something deeper in her eyes. Respect, yes, but something warmer too. You know, she said, in Elantari culture, saving someone's life 3 times means you are bonded to them. Elias blinked. 3 times? I only count 1. She smiled. You pulled me from the crash, stopped the raiders, and now gave me a second chance with my ship. That's 3. He rubbed the back of his neck. Well, I didn't mean to start any cultural bonding ceremonies. Talira chuckled. I didn't say I minded. But peace didn't last long. That night, while Elias was checking the ship's stabilizers, he heard a noise. Faint at first, like a distant hum. Then louder, a vibration in the ground. Talira ran from the workshop. Do you hear that? He nodded. Engines. Big ones. They climbed to the top of a nearby ridge and looked out. In the far distance, lights were moving. 3, maybe 4, ships low and fast. One of them had the smooth, dark shape of an Elantari stealth cruiser. They found us, Talira whispered. Elias's jaw tightened. That's a kill squad. We can't fight them, she said quickly. Not with this ship, not yet. Elias looked at her, calm but serious. Then we run, now. The ship roared to life as they jumped aboard. Talira took the pilot seat, Elias beside her in the co-pilot chair. The interior still smelled like melted wire and oil, but everything was working. Talira's fingers flew over the controls. You sure this thing will hold? Elias buckled in. It'll fly. Maybe not. Smoothly, but it'll fly. The ship lifted, shaking slightly, then shot forward over the canyon. Behind them, laser fire lit up the sky as the enemy ships spotted them. They're locking on, Elias shouted. Not for long. Talira pulled a lever, and the ship dropped, suddenly, skimming just above the canyon floor. Rocks sped past and alarms beeped everywhere, but Elias grinned. This is crazy. It's working, she replied. They flew fast and low, ducking into tunnels formed by ancient riverbeds. The enemy cruisers followed, firing blindly. Elias flipped a switch and released an old satellite dish from the cargo bay. It bounced on the rocks behind them and exploded. One of the enemy ships took the full blast and spun out of control. Nice trick, Talira said. Elias gave a small nod. Sometimes junk can save your life. They flew deep into the canyon where signal jammers blocked tracking systems. Finally, the enemies gave up. The scanners went silent. The ship landed gently near an old mining station Elias had marked long ago. Safe for now. Inside the cockpit, they sat in silence, breathing hard. Talira looked at him. You just escaped a military ambush in a ship built from broken parts and kitchen tools. Elias smiled. And you flew like a starhawk. She reached out and took his hand. You saved me again. Just keeping the count even. For a moment they didn't speak. The lights flickered around them. Her hand stayed in his. You don't have to come with me, she said finally. Once we're clear, I'll go back alone. You've done enough. Elias looked into her eyes. I'm not done yet. They tried to kill you. I want to help you stop them. Talira's voice was soft. Why? You hardly know me. He smiled. I know enough. You're brave, smart, loyal, and I like being around you. She blushed, just slightly, then leaned her head against his shoulder. You know, she whispered, in some places in the galaxy this counts as a promise. Elias chuckled. Well, maybe I'm making one. That night, as they rested in the mining station, Talira fell asleep beside him for the first time, trusting him completely. Elias stayed awake a little longer, watching the stars through the cracked roof. He had lived alone for so long, fixed machines, fought ghosts, built everything with his own hands. But now, someone had entered his quiet life and brought it back, to motion, not just her ship, not just the mission, but his heart. He looked down at her peaceful face. Maybe some things are worth fighting for. Maybe some things are worth building, not with metal, but with trust. The sun rose slowly over the canyons of Vorta 9, casting long orange shadows across the desert floor. The quiet mining station where Elias and Talira rested was surrounded by rusted machines and broken pipes, but inside, hope felt alive. Talira sat on a crate beside the ship. The once broken fighter gleamed now, though parts of it still bore the scars of battle and repair. The humming of the reactor was steady, a song of survival. Elias moved around her, checking the engine, fine-tuning the circuits and adjusting the controls. Despite the ship's patched-together nature, it was powerful. Almost ready, he said, but there's one thing you need to know. Talira looked up. What? There's a special engine part I made for you, an emergency hypersurge drive. It's a secret weapon. It can jump you light years in seconds, but it only works once. Her eyes widened. One jump, and then what? After that, the ship's too damaged to fly again. She paused. That means we have one chance to escape whoever's hunting me. Elias nodded. Or one chance to fight back. They spent the day preparing the ship and gathering supplies from the mining station. Elias showed Talira how to use the emergency drive and explained its risks. You have to be sure, he said, because once you use it, you can't turn back. Talira's fingers brushed over the worn control panel. If I'm going to use it, I want to use it with you. Elias smiled. That's what I wanted to hear. That evening, they sat outside, watching the twin moons rise above the canyon. The stars were bright, sharper than on Earth or even the Elantari homeworld. Talira reached out and took Elias's hand. I never thought I'd find someone like you on this lonely rock. Elias squeezed her hand gently. You found me when I was fixing broken things, and maybe I fixed more than your ship. She smiled softly. Maybe. But the peace was short-lived. A message came through the ship's comm system. Weak, scrambled, but clear enough for Talira to understand. It's from the Elantari fleet, she said, her voice tight. They think I'm dead. Elias frowned. Then whoever sent the raiders must have lied. They want me gone, Talira whispered. But I want to prove who betrayed me. Elias stood. Then we do it together. The next morning they climbed into the ship. The cockpit smelled of oil and solder, but also hope. Talira adjusted her armor and sealed the helmet. Elias took his place beside her, buckling in. She took a deep breath. Ready? Always. The engines roared as the ship lifted from the ground. The patched hull shuddered but held firm. As they broke through the canyon's edge, the radar lit up. Enemy ships closing fast. Elias grinned. Looks like they're throwing a welcome party. Talira laughed, the sound bright and clear. Let's crash it. The chase was brutal. Enemy fighters came from all sides, firing lasers that scorched the ship's hull. Elias operated the defense systems, using every trick he knew, from deploying smoke screens made from old mining dust to activating jammers scavenged from broken satellites. Talira flew with skill born of years in the fleet. She dove, rolled, and spiraled through asteroid fields and narrow passes. But the enemies were relentless. Suddenly, one of the enemy ships locked onto them with a powerful beam, a beam that could tear the patched hull apart. Talira's voice was steady but urgent. "Elias, now's the time." He nodded and activated the emergency hypersurge drive. The ship vibrated violently as the energy built. "Hold on," Elias shouted. A blinding flash filled the cockpit. When the light faded, they were far from Vorta 9, deep in uncharted space. The silence after the jump was deafening. Talira removed her helmet and looked at Elias. "We made it." He smiled, relief washing over him. "Yeah, but now the hard part begins." They were in unknown space with no clear allies and a ship that could not make another jump. Talira reached for Elias's hand again. "We fight from here," Elias nodded. "Together." Over the next days, they repaired what they could and made contact with underground networks sympathetic to Talira's cause. Elias's knowledge of machines and tactics helped them survive skirmishes and avoid traps. Talira's leadership and courage inspired those they met. Together, they became more than just pilot and engineer. They became partners. One quiet evening, as they shared a meal in a safe house, Talira looked at Elias. "Seriously, I want to marry you." Elias blinked, surprised. "After everything," she continued, "you're the one I trust, the one who saved my life, the one I want by my side." Elias smiled warmly. "I was hoping you'd say that." She laughed softly. "Good, because I'm not letting you go." He took her hand. "Then we'll face whatever comes next, together." The stars outside the window seemed brighter that night, like the universe itself was celebrating a new bond forged from scrap, trust, and hope. The Elantari capital city was unlike anything Elias had ever seen. Towers of shining crystal stretched high into the sky, catching the sunlight and scattering rainbows across the streets below. Flying cars and glowing bridges made the city feel alive and vibrant. But Elias didn't care much for the beauty. His eyes were fixed on the crowd gathered outside the main government hall. The people were murmuring, pointing at the battered ship that had landed just minutes ago. The ship Elias had rebuilt with scrap and determination. Beside him, Talira stood tall in her uniform, pride shining in her violet eyes. She had come home, not just as a survivor but as a fighter ready to face those who had betrayed her. Inside the hall, voices rose and fell in heated debate. Talira's broadcast had spread like wildfire, exposing the corruption in the fleet command and the traitors who had tried to kill her. The government could no longer ignore the truth. Elias watched quietly as Talira spoke before the council. Her voice was strong, clear, and filled with purpose. "We have been betrayed from within. I am alive because of one man, a human, who refused to let me die. Together we will root out this corruption and restore honor to our fleet." The room fell silent. Then, one by one, council members nodded in agreement. The change had begun. Later, outside the hall, people came forward to thank Elias. Some were curious, some skeptical, but most were amazed that a human, with no special training or high rank, had saved one of their own and brought the truth to light. Talira smiled proudly and took Elias's hand. "You did this. You saved me and saved us all." He shrugged modestly. "I just fixed what was broken. The rest was up to you." She leaned in close and whispered, "And what about us?" Elias looked into her eyes, the same eyes that had first opened in his arms on that distant planet. "Us?" he said, a small smile spreading across his face. "I think we're just getting started." Days passed, and life settled into a new rhythm. Elias was offered a position as chief engineer for the Elantari fleet. It was a great honor, but he surprised everyone by declining. "I'm a scavenger at heart," he said. "I like fixing things in my own way." Instead, he chose to stay on Vorta 9, where the wild canyons and endless scrap fields awaited him. Talira agreed to join him there, to build a life away from politics and betrayal. Together, they dreamed of a future filled with adventure, discovery, and maybe even peace. One evening, under the twin moons of Vorta 9, Elias and Talira sat side by side outside the iron nest. The repaired ship rested nearby, gleaming softly in the moonlight. Talira leaned her head on Elias's shoulder. "I never thought I'd find home on a scrap planet." Elias smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "Home isn't where you live, it's who you're with." She smiled back. "Then I'm home." As they sat in silence, watching the stars twinkle, above, Elias thought about how far they had come, from a crashed ship and a chance meeting to battles, betrayals, and a bond forged stronger than any metal. He kissed her forehead gently. "Sleep now," he whispered. "Tomorrow we fly again." And as she closed her eyes, safe in his arms, Elias knew that whatever the universe threw at them next, they would face it together. Because sometimes, it's not the biggest ships or the strongest weapons that win wars, it's the human heart.